this is Frankie Baby here, and I wanted to go over a little bit of an unsolved mystery for you today. The case we have here is about two native Dutch girls who went missing on the hike in Panama that they were on. Their disappearance was astonishing due to the fact of a series of photos left by them within a 3-hour span that were taken amongst all the photos prior. Today, their deaths still remain a mystery. So I wanted to dive into this a little bit with you. So come join me on this unsolved mystery of the two Panama girls.
Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon were Dutch students who died on or shortly after April 1st, 2014, while hiking in Panama. After an extensive search, portions of their bodies were found a few months later. Their cause of death could not be determined definitely, but Dutch authorities, working with forensic and search and rescue investigators, thought it likely the students had accidentally fallen from a cliff after becoming lost. The circumstances and aftermath of the disappearance have resulted in much speculation about the cause of death. Foul play could not be entirely ruled out, and officials came under fire for allegedly mishandling the disappearance and aftermath. Further investigation into the case in 2017 uncovered enough new evidence to suggest foul play, as well as possible link to other murders in the area. Kremers and Froon arrived in Panama for a 6-week vacation on March 15, 2014. They toured Panama for 2 weeks before arriving in Bacuit on March 29th to live with a local family for a month while volunteering with children. On April 1st, they went hiking with their host's dog around 11 o'clock near the clouded forest that surrounded the Baru volcano. They wrote on Facebook that they intended to walk around Bacuit, and it was reported that they had been having brunch with 2 young Dutchmen before embarking on the trail. Their host became alarmed when their dog returned home that night without the young women. Froon's parents stopped receiving text messages, which both women had been sending to their families daily. On the morning of April 2nd, Froon and Kremers missed an appointment with a local guide. On April 3rd, authorities began aerial searches of the forest, and local residents began searching. On April 6th, the parents of Kremers and Froon arrived in Panama, along with police, dog units, and detectives from the Netherlands, to conduct a full-scale search of the forest for 10 days. The parents offered a $30,000 reward. 10 weeks later, a local woman turned in Froon's blue backpack, which she said she found in a rice paddy by the riverbank. The backpack contained 2 pairs of sunglasses, $83 in U.S. cash, Froon's passport, a water bottle, Froon's camera, 2 bras, and the woman's phones, all packed dry and in good condition.
Something I found interesting about the phone calls were that the girls dialed 112, the emergency number in the Netherlands, and 911, the emergency number in Panama, numerous times on April 1st. The calls did not go through due to a lack of service in the area, except for one attempt to call 911 on April 3rd, and that lasted a little bit over a second before breaking up completely. This is where it gets weird. After April 5th, Lisanne's battery died sometime after 5 o'clock and was never used again. No more calls were made from Kris's phone, but someone did turn it on for reception. Someone attempted several times to enter a false PIN code, very sketchy, on the iPhone. It never received the correct PIN again. Finally, on April 11th, someone turned on the phone at 10:51 and turned it off for the last time at 11:56. That just seems odd to me. Am I wrong here? This seems like someone else was with them, or this is something of a case of their last dying breath and they keep checking their phone for help. I just don't know. It does seem like there's a lot of foul play with the evidence that is given to us. And the pictures themselves are very disturbing in nature, because every picture you look at, you're kind of, I'm sure that you'll find yourself doing this, you're creating your own story of what could possibly be. And that is what's so fascinating to me with Unsolved Mysteries, is because each individual person who sees this case and is open to the idea of it being more than just some accident can conjure up many, many things.
Authorities immediately began an extensive search of the area and located Kris's jean shorts about a mile upstream from where the backpack was discovered. Some people say that they were found zipped and neatly folded on top of a rock, whilst others contend that they were found floating in the river itself. One of Kris's empty boots was also located in the same area. If the discovery of clothing and apparel had been a reason to panic, nothing would prepare the families for what came next. Over the next 2 months, up to 33 bone fragments were found scattered over a small area, including a piece of Lisanne's pelvis as well as one of her boots with her foot bones still inside. Fragments of Kris's bones were also found relatively close by, along with those of 3 other unidentified individuals. This came as something of a shock to those close to the case, and suspicions of foul play began to weigh heavily on everyone's minds. In the meantime, police had been checking the contents of both the phones and the camera. It was discovered that between the dates of the 1st and 3rd of April, the girls had made a total of 7 failed attempts to call emergency services, the first call being placed only a few hours after they had reached the Mirador on the day of their hike at 16:39 in the afternoon. After the 3rd of April, the phones were only ever powered on to carry out signal checks. No further attempts to call emergency services were made. It is believed that Lisanne's phone ran out of battery on the 5th, as it was not turned on again after this date. On the 6th, Kris's phone was powered on, but the access pin was entered incorrectly for the first time. In fact, a total of 77 attempts to access the phone were made between the 7th and 10th of April, but all were unsuccessful. This phone was switched on again on the 11th for a signal check and was left active for just over an hour, before being switched off for the final time. The phones were not accessed again after this date. The most chilling aspect of the entire case, however, would be the 100 or so photographs that were found on Lisanne's camera. The first 11 images were ordinary enough. Taken on the 1st of April, they showed the girls walking along the trail, taking selfies and generally enjoying the hike. But as the afternoon wore on, the last few of these images begin to exhibit a different mood. Pictures taken from behind Kris show her looking back at Lisanne with an uncertain expression. The camera was not used again from the 2nd to the 7th of April, but in the early hours of the 8th, between 1 AM and 4 AM in the morning, more than 90 photos were taken in complete darkness. Neither of the women are featured in these images, apart from a close-up of Kris's strawberry blonde hair with what looks like dried blood on her skin. What they do show are snapshots of the dark jungle interior, most of which are aimed at nothing in particular, although a few of them do seem to have a purpose in mind. Some show twigs and reflective materials laid out in deliberate patterns, others with plastic bags hooked onto branches. One is even believed to have been taken from the top of a ravine, looking down upon a body lying at the bottom, but it is far too dark to be conclusive, even after enhancement. All in all, the images add a somewhat bizarre element to the case, but unfortunately, they present far more questions than they do answers. So what happened to these 2 young women during the days after they went missing? The most prominent theory is that they took a wrong turn whilst on the Continental Divide, and instead of heading back down towards Boquete on the south side, they moved into the much deeper wilderness to the north. Once they realised they had become lost, they tried calling emergency services, but were unsuccessful. They probably continued moving downhill in this direction, hoping they would find their way out or stumble upon a settlement. But unknown to Kris and Lisanne, the only thing that awaited them was even more notoriously difficult terrain, with a lot of almost impassable ravines. It is believed that on the 5th of April, Kris suffered a terrible, perhaps even fatal, accident. The fact that the person who tried to access her phone on the 6th did not know the pin suggests that this was probably Lisanne. Kris must have been either unconscious or dead at this point, otherwise she would have been able to just tell her friend what the pin number was. There is a possibility that Lisanne stayed with the dead or dying Kris for some time, not wanting to leave her alone. When she at last decided to move on, she placed markers indicating where Kris's body was located in case she made it out alive and had to guide rescuers back in to retrieve her body, and this was believed to be the purpose of the nighttime photos. Either that, or she was using the flash as a light source as she walked through the forest in darkness, which would have been highly dangerous. In any case, Lisanne probably survived a few more days. This was supported by the fact that Kris's phone was powered on again on the 11th. However, she must have eventually succumbed to starvation or dehydration soon afterwards, or suffered an accident of her own. The bones found inside her boot indicated that she had broken her foot at some point, suggesting she had suffered a trip or fall. The bodies of the two women were then at the mercy of scavengers, and their remains were more than likely washed downstream towards El Torremero. Despite being a relatively plausible explanation, there are a number of issues with this theory. First of all, how could the girls have taken a wrong turn whilst on the Continental Divide? The north-facing slopes are much steeper than the south, and it would have been obvious that this was not the way they had come. Secondly, from the Mirador, the Pianista Trail is easily recognisable, and you can even see the town of Boquete lying in the valley below from this altitude. So why did they travel in the opposite direction? Could they have been forced into going this way? Foul play has never been ruled out of this case, and although evidence regarding their phone usage seems to contradict the involvement of a third party, there are other possibilities. A kidnapper would never have allowed the two women to keep hold of their phones, so it is unlikely that they were ever abducted. But what if they had been followed? According to an article published in 2016 by the Daily Beast, there is apparently a tour guide in Boquete who many locals suspect as having something to do with the deaths of the two women. He was not named, but it is known that he had met with Lisanne and Kris less than 24 hours before they disappeared. He had offered them a full tour package, including a guided hike up to the Continental Divide, plus an overnight stay at his ranch on the other side of the mountains. For reasons known only to themselves, the girls declined his offer and decided to walk the Pianista Trail alone. This particular tour guide has a reputation in the town for being overly friendly towards female tourists. In fact, even some hikers who have visited the region mentioned on Reddit when discussing this case that this same tour guide had behaved inappropriately towards their own girlfriends, petting them and touching them. Could this man have taken Kris and Lisanne's rejection as a slight? Could he have followed them up the Pianista Trail and have scared them into seeking another route down? After all, he was the one who first discovered their remains, and what's more, they were located less than half a mile from his ranch. And suspicions regarding a third party do not end there. When forensics examined Lisanne's backpack, they discovered more than 30 sets of fingerprints on it. Whilst it is possible that the lady who found the bag may have passed it around her village before handing it in to police, this was never confirmed. Another unusual aspect is the lack of grease on the backpack and items of recovered clothing. As a body decomposes, grease evacuates the soft tissues and soaks into whatever the cadaver is wearing, and one would expect this to have been found on the girls' apparel if they had died as the result of an accident. There were also questions raised over the condition of some of the remains. Kris's bones looked as if they had been bleached, which was not in accordance with the rate of decay, and seemed unlikely given the covering of the forest canopy. However, this depends entirely on where her bones were located. If they had been washed up on the bank of a river, for instance, which received more sunlight, it is not incomprehensible for them to have been bleached in the intense rays over a period of months. On the other hand, there were no markings on the bones whatsoever. If the bodies had fallen victim to scavengers after death, teeth marks and other minuscule abrasions would have been detected under a microscope, but there were none. The lack of any big bones is also troubling for many investigators. Why didn't they find any significant remains? As one of the most prominent guides in Boquete was quoted as saying, There are no animals up there that would eat a skull, so where are the rest of Kris and Lisanne's bodies? Other pertinent questions regarding the deletion of a picture on the camera also point to the possibility of something more sinister. Image 509, which sits in between the final daytime photo taken on the 1st and the first nighttime photo taken on the 8th, seem to be missing, but it's unclear whether this was deleted by one of the girls or another party later on, perhaps to hide something. It should come as no surprise that many people in the town suspect a cover-up. As tourism accounts for almost $4 billion a year, 18% of Panama's GDP, residents insist that the accident scenario has been overly pushed by local authorities rather than one involving foul play, in order to protect that income. Especially since the deaths of Kris and Lisanne, it is now believed that there may be a serial killer at large in the area. There have been up to 25 deaths and disappearances in the region which remain unsolved, 2/3 of which have occurred over the last 3 years. This makes one wonder who the other 3 individuals were whose remains were found along with the girls, but authorities simply explain this by saying that the terrain on that side of the divide is very dangerous. Even the indigenous peoples are wary of traversing that part of the region, and many have died crossing the monkey bridges which crisscross the ravines. There are many more theories out there, of course. Some believe the girls were eaten by pygmy cannibals, or killed for their organs by traffickers. Some even favour a supernatural explanation, and have noted similarities with missing 411 cases. But as it stands, the deaths of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon were more than likely a tragic accident, although it seems that there are far too many questions hanging over this case to conclude this with any certainty. Too many bizarre elements, such as why Lisanne took those photos at night and not in the daytime. What was she trying to tell us? Was she simply trying to find her way in the dark, or possibly even scare off wild animals? Was she so sleep deprived and dehydrated by this time that she was possibly hallucinating? And was it even her who took the photographs at all? Unfortunately, we'll probably never know why Kris and Lisanne decided to pass over to the other side of the divide. Maybe they took a wrong turn, maybe they were forced, or maybe they just felt overconfident and wanted to explore further. Simply put, what we have here is a case of 2 young women getting lost in the jungle, desperately needing assistance and never receiving any.
That's a lot. So what do you guys think about this case? Do you think it's accidental death, or could it quite possibly be murder? I'd love for you to leave a comment below and let me know what you think. This is Frankie Baby here, and thanks for watching.
If you digged my video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.